war's over, but we all lost. There is no winner here. Central rule is gone and dead. The initial prize, the initial spark to this conflict, all those gems on Inaro. But it wasn't just for riches, it wasn't just for a spark, it was what they could be used for in tech, used for in bridging. And whoever controlled the bridging controlled Central Rule. The connection between all the stars. Then first the mining, then the fighting. After then to the now, the Central Rule is dead. What's left for civilization eats up the scraps of this war. Warlords, minor barons, strange cultists. All of these groups hunger for power, everyone just trying to get by underneath their tyrannical reign. And as the scraps of civilization are eating itself apart, there's a static in the noise, a static in the electricity in every machine, a static that whispers of the void. From the collapse of the universe is ending. There is no promised land past these walls, past the next bridging ship taking you to another dying system, the stars going supernova, the big crunch finally coming in, the behemoths in the void. Welcome to your death in space. Hi, hello, and welcome to Death in Space, where the game is what's promised on the box. Because that's a lot of its content, that's a lot of its experience, that's a lot of the lore, is that this place sucks and you're gonna die here. And then throw on top of that, after the collapse of a galactic civilization, you have the end of the universe. And the static from the void, its whispers coming through all technology. And the navies, those making those bridging jumps out into unknown space, bringing strange rumors of strange apparitions, manifestations, large lurking behemoths between the dead stars. A star dotted by black voids and massive panoramic supernovae. Not to mention locally, the numerous dead and rusted stations, ruins that are already planted down and in space, space stations that are left amuck, mining stations abandoned, entire ship graveyards of previous battlefields. And then when you even get to the people, you do have those gang leaders, those warlords, those smugglers, and the cultists. Oh, not to mention the port fanatics, like the spacers from Firefly. Are they spacers? You know, going mad, sharpening teeth, becoming cannibals. That's not even talking about the other supernatural stuff. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so first to what we are in this rough order. How did we get to this ruined state, this system, TENNEBRIS? So as the system was first being explored, there was a discovery on the moon Inaro. These strange root-like growths on desolate moons would then have these strange cysts that on its inside would have these fine gems. Not just fine in the fact that they look pretty, they're not meant for jewelry, it's all the tech they could be used for. The specifics are left quite vague on whether it could be used for lasers, laser dish arrays, refracting light, a focus of some kind, but the big thing it's a focus for is for bridging, the FTL of this setting, where it's not going into hyperspace, it's not accelerating under near light, it's not warping, and while it doesn't give an exact description on how scientifically it's working, it describes it always as breaking space and time in front of it. There's even some groups in setting that blame bridging drives on the death of the universe. But in any case, a planet and new resource and material that could make manufacturing these bridging drives simple. And then the history gets fuzzy as this is leading up to the collapse itself. There's the initial colonists, then there's the megacorps moving in, then there's the wars of the megacorps, then this stretches out into other systems, and eventually the war and its repercussions lead to such a scale that even though a side technically won, the central authority of Central Rule is just eliminated. It has entirely collapsed. It's trade routes, bridging ships and vessels, essentially large motherships that could jump into a system, carry a bunch of small vessels, and then move back to the other system and drop them off. A lot of those were destroyed during the war. Alongside them also ferrying information, as there is no faster-than-light information. That has to be either slowly with radio over short distance, or if you're going long-range, laser dish arrays. Or in the best of situations, and what the Central Rule used, bridging ships. But in any case, a lot of this infrastructure sabotaged, used by the enemy, destroyed by the other. And with the Central Rule falling, it doesn't matter that there was a winner. It doesn't matter to anyone in the TENNEBRIS system, or the neighboring systems, or these isolated solar systems now, as the universe is also ending. This noise and the static technology acting weird. Specific horrors that were made for the war, these half biological and mechanical creatures or fungal colonies that act as this virus specifically targeting weapons, the port fanatics, the people gone mad as cannibalistic crews trapped on wrecked ships, and your other mundane humans trying to take advantage of the situation. And it's at this time, roughly a few decades after, is where you start your game. That's where the setting is taking place. Particularly in the TENNEBRIS system, where this all kicked off, where there's a huge concentration of, well, the scars of this war, the previous ship graveyards, the battles on the planets themselves and the moon. The ruins of massive mining operations, attempted colonial sites, all now gone and wasted. Rubble and scrap to be collected and inhabited later, or never again. But specifically focusing on that again, the scraps, the wrecks, people coming back for them, because this is Mad Max in space. Sure, there's some cyberpunk elements and some other dystopian sections of the colonies, but in general, with the re-scrapping, nothing is new. There are no, like, factories readily making stuff anymore. You live in a world and system where there's just these massive wrecks everywhere. There's enough scrap that this entire... there was a ring built around the moon Inaro, partly during and finished after the war. And even then, finished is a very generous term for the Iron Ring. But every ship is made of reused parts, stolen from another thing, to the point that this goes into the mechanics. Scrap is one of the most valuable things you can have, outside of immediate hollows to spend and buy things, for all your equipment, for your ship, for your station, because you also have a ship and station as some of your core mechanics for your party. Because with the title, Death in Space, your character might die very quickly, the one thing holding over is the ship between all of you. But this isn't just based off the mechanics, the scrap, the durability of things, and patching it all together from across the system. It's the fact that everyone is doing this, and has been doing this over the course of this war, over the decades after, as nothing is clean, nothing is put together, there's open wires everywhere, it's wire gore. It's what a Mechanicus shrine looks like, with all the wires everywhere, the tubing, that high industrial, no pretty presentation on anything. Everything is jury-rigged, built over and over again with slightly misused parts, and all to the point of just functioning. This is where it's Mad Max in space. There's the usual, like, ominous look, especially with some of the images in the book, and especially with the music on the website, or the ambient tracks provided on the website. But you could really totally change this, especially with the description of pirating, as using firearms on any of these small enclosed quarters or pressurized systems is a death sentence. Not to mention it does throw you back. So you use melee. And you're trying to save the ship, you want to save that scrap, it's valuable, you're not going to blow it out of the sky, you're going to get close and use the jumping ship rules to bodily throw yourself on a space drive-by onto another ship you're going to board. Or you pick up the catapult contraption to throw you. This isn't to say that you can't blast them out of the sky, there's plenty of war crime material that's left floating around on some of the other warships. But this is the situation everyone's in. No one's well off, everyone lost in this war. A reminder, a war that was still fresh. Again, you're only a few decades out from it. Does it matter who won? Not really. But this has left mercenaries, all these war machines, warships, private deserters, these fresh-faced warlords coming out of this conflict, or the cults taking advantage after listening to the static. And it's not just the static from the cultists. It's not just a random thing slightly giving off whispers or just the rumors off from the navies. There is corruption, there's void corruptions, there's void mutations, or accidentally summoning things from beyond, the behemoths within the darkness, the black of the sky. Sometimes a negative thing, or you could purposely call upon it.
But to the noises in the static, the ones that hide behind mask and groan, the cults of Tennebris, Liad Somnium, channel to become. These denizens of the broken planet hidden away within the bunkers and underground complexes, both within the crust and that has been ejected into the atmosphere, or what was atmosphere, even though they seem to have devolved in language and physicality. Still slightly resembling humans, it is their mind that is a danger, potentially a connection to the void. They call to something, and something responds. Materia first, protect with surface. There is no true worth in life outside of what is worth. Hollow, scrap, treasures, people. The sole pursuit of life is material. Gather it, hoard it, bring it to the beyond, and backstab anyone on your way there. There's only room for one at the top, and while their top dog hides within the block, they're spread all throughout the system. All of its bounty theirs by right. To the other, beyond the void. Once a mercenary company fighting for gems, lost in the war, their leadership found something. Something from beyond, from the void, and they must travel there, fueling their efforts in their few numbers with plenty of enhancements, combat stims, and other addictions. Scrap is their main want in this construction of a holy ark vessel hidden within the asteroid belt. Pathic. Connect the unknown. The strangers from out of the system, once familiar, lost in between a bridging drive. Descendants of possible navies. They are different, not truly human anymore, plying their way through the dark in between the stars, but still laying buoys, still exploring, still trying to find whatever their ancestors left for. Now to your place in Tennebris.
But those are the vibes. On to what you're actually playing. Now, this is one of my knocks against it. You don't really have much of a class system or progression system. I kind of supplement this with another system with a similar vibe. But you have 6 origins your character can be from, and then 2 subcategories you can pick, or specializations. First, you have a carbon, specifically designed clones. Born in 0G and meant to fulfill certain jobs, adapted to the environment, more comfortable with an EV suit than in their own skin. You could be actually designed for handling just further distance space travel, or the fact you're in an area where oxygen is precious. Having advanced lungs, or a gearhead specifically programmed ahead of time with the ability to be really good with mechanics. Being able to work on the ship, already being designed for a job. You also have a crone, which is that mix of biological and technological, almost a manufactured android. But the kind of android that's not plasticky, the one that's more Blade Runner-like, but you can talk to machines, you can plug yourself in and be able to communicate with equipment. Or use yourself as a battery. You can have one thing that requires power just for free, just as it's plugged into you. In a classic, you have Punk. This is just someone who's a bit rebellious or on their own, a hotshot. Or not a hotshot. You're just not going to listen to anyone. You're out on your own. This could also mean in the sense of just not listening to authority. You have a bit of a green thumb instead of the gearhead. Being able to work with plants and starting with some of them, which, when food is an issue, that's actually pretty nice. Or you can just have one of the likely best base abilities. You can just re-roll. Not always, but once per session. Soul Pod, you are someone who's disconnected, someone who's purposely been studying effects over long periods of time. Cryologically frozen and then waking at certain moments to be able to document, talk, and do your work. One of these paths is the fact that you can have multiple connections, useful, already present. You've met someone's grandfather and you're talking to their grandson. You're this old mythological figure that everyone seems to already know, or at least their grandparents knew. The other one is Old Tech, your pod, a hyper-advanced version of cryogenic storage that is also regenerating your limbs in it, and is solar-powered so it can just hover in space around a star. Velocity Cursed. Now, you are cursed with either bridging or the fact the universe is collapsing, but you have literally fallen out of time. You are not in sync both in memory and in physicality, as your face almost is described as glitching between different states and different times. Your memory is also not in any particular order, jumping from befores and afters and presents. But one of these abilities is Deja Vu, where you can just know the way you've been. You just know the direction of something. You know where you need to go. You've seen it, you've been here. The other is a portable virtual reality environment that you are using to store and order all your past life events, and can be used with other people as well. And lastly is Void. You are one of the cultists. There's many. Pick your cult, or add one, make one. You've just randomly talked to a soup can that began whispering to you. That's your normal everyday thing, but then you just grew magnetic cysts on your hands. With the Void, you can have these masks that can be adjusted, the secret societies, the cultists hiding amongst everyone, from a distance able to fool many people. Or have some influence over the static that's in everything. You're able to make voices and whispers come out of it. But when it comes to character specializations or classes or advancement outside of some basic stats, this is what you got. Everything else is equipment. But that's a bit more where your station or ship comes in, your hub. A central location that has its own stats, and if that dies, then your party officially dies. People can be replaced, the ship can't. Or maybe, depending on how your games run. People die quickly, the game's called Death in Space. The ship lasts a bit longer. Key thing being a bit longer, not forever. But on to where you're playing this, where your ship or station is, where your adventures in the TENNEBRIS system are.
Welcome to your tour of the TENNEBRIS system. This place is not the best. We'll be going over all the key features starting from the inner ring out. Lacrimosa, closest to TENNEBRIS and the hottest. And not even accounting for the molten activity on the surface. It was used for something during the colonization or the Gem Wars. Plenty of subsurface facilities and bunkers that are still hidden and locked away, or breached by the magma. Not to mention the numerous fields of debris, apparently a hotspot during the war which still orbits it. Aware of Kessler syndrome. Amisa, one of the few promising colonies in the system, it's become almost nothing but a husk of dunes going over previous ruins and cracked farm domes. Scatterings of empty launch sites and the one populated place left, the block. Tight, narrow, cramped, but at least it keeps out the sand. Liad, which was a nice planet once, but after a meteor struck it, the whole place is a broken mess, with chunks of its own crust stuck within its orbit and stretching all the way to the Messer asteroid belt. There's still people that try to live there, though, either in the chunks around it in orbit or in the old bunkers and underground facilities there. Lepidoptera, an actually pleasant world, kind of, if it wasn't for the strange solar activity and magnetic field disruption. All that messes with your systems, lots of crashes around there or being stuck on the surface during a blackout and unable to get back up. Tech working there is iffy at best. Old ruins dot the surface, swallowed up by the jungle there, and its black grass covering everything, not to mention the vicious wildlife there. Glycallo, beautiful colored Class 2 gas giant. Though, nothing really inhabited on it, because it's a gas giant. The big thing is the Jewel of Inaro around it, and then the iron ring around that. Inaro, yellow moon, not because of its surface, but because of its dense, thick, opaque atmosphere. Surprisingly breathable, though. Bit heavy, but eh. The big thing with Inaro is the scattering of rust and scrap. The place was previously a mining colony, and then a war zone after, especially during the rush of gems. Most of it's abandoned. Previous smelting facilities, launch ports, but some people still occupy some of it, hoping to scrape some new gems still hidden away. And then the Iron Ring. Partly an actual attempt to construct a mining outpost, a connection of stations entirely orbiting the planet, all interlinked and connected with one another, wouldn't be finished till after the war. And finished is a generous term. All this mishmash of previous ships, carrier vessels, colony vessels, any random station or equipment that could be just strung together. You can't even walk simultaneously through the whole thing with entire abandoned sections in between or stuff open to vacuum. And even though it's the center of civilization in Tennebris, there is not one person or group in charge. Just different people holding different sections. Mezcancri, not the best place to be. Massive volcanic activity and unique chemical situation to allow for diamonds to form just from specific things being thrown into the atmosphere. Entire rivers of this stuff flowing back into the magma. And while it's beautiful for the previous megacorps that could visit and vacation here, it's terrible for anyone that's stuck mining it. Ogre. Giant ice ball with an ocean hidden underneath it. Not much going on outside of it being a nice fueling spot, still open to travelers, and namely that miles below the surface are the hibernating creatures and the research outpost there, held up by some soul pods that are still going from even before the war. Wendell. Stranger to Tennebris. Rogue planet that's been heading closer and closer to the system, but with its internal heating and radiation has actually managed to stay warm. Relatively, still frozen. Strangest thing about it, outside of it being a rogue planet, is the Pathic have some interest in it. And there you go. Outside of a few different ports here or there, the one purging beacon, some other ship graveyards, or the asteroid belt, that's Tennebris. Enjoy your stay.
And that's Tennebris. Not the most pleasant place, but you're stuck here. This is your home. Whether you came in with the war, whether you've been in cryo storage until now, generations that have grown up here, part of the original miners, or the colonies that was set up here initially, you are stuck here, along with everyone else. And it's left up to you. Alongside the end of the universe, the collapse of central rule, just like these other warlords though. What are you making of it? Those megacorps that had a massive top down on everything, they're gone. Your destiny is whatever you can scramble and scrap together. You might not even need to rely on the specific bridging ship coming in with the buoy. You might be able to scrap together your own, steal a drive, earn enough hollows to get up to that, or just make your own name for yourself, build your own station, or take one. But really, this is a survival game. You're living in a post-apocalypse on a galactic scale, an interstellar scale, a universal scale. The universe is collapsing in on itself, stars are going supernova, and what's left of civilization and the survivors are all fighting amongst themselves, bickering, making kings out of the scrap. Thrones of wrecked stations and warships, cobbled together from the remains of entire ship graveyards to make one working vessel. Leftover bioweapons, the anarchy code, rewriting your genetic code on the base level first to cause you into a frenzy, becoming a living weapon, and killing you in the process. Port fanatic cannibals that have been stuck on isolated spaceships, now wanting to eat and harvest from anything else they can sail next to. Or any of the horrific alien monstrosities on any of these other worlds. Or brought in or imported, or the mass machinery, the weapons of mass destruction left in orbit or within bunkers. Your ship being torn apart from an accident, a leak in the oxygen, being torn apart by just a random shrapnel you weren't suspecting as it just shreds through you, your crew, your ship, and everything. Turned into red mist in an instant from micrometeorites you couldn't see. Or just being left in space. Being thrown out of a spaceship in airlock, and no one being able to hear you scream. Because the game promised you something. You will die here. Thank you for watching the video on Death in Space. Minor tidbits, one of them is that the lore is kept purposely vague in some sense. Even giving rough suggestions on whether you want this to be an all-human, advanced humanity just kind of splitting itself apart, or you could have the different origins represent different alien species. Or do whatever you want with that. In any of these cases, though, it is a harsh post-apocalypse I keep thinking Mad Max in space just because the description of people boarding or pirates like actively hanging on just reminded me of the War Boys. And all these things scavenged and cobbled together. I mean, one of the attachments is a catapult meant to launch people in spacesuits so they can board other vessels. Like, not a fancy pod, not teleporting them on, they're just chucking them through the vacuum of space. But once again, thank you for watching the video, a thank you to my patrons, and have a nice day.
Twinkle, twinkle.